Hey guys, let's just get stuck into what happened this week. First up, Rishi Sunak has managed to progress his Rwanda bill one step further. If you don't remember, the idea to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda was dreamt up over 2 years ago when Boris Johnson was haunting Parliament. Here's the lowdown. If you want to claim asylum in the UK, you must be physically in the UK. Also, there are no safe or legal routes into the UK if you're coming here from a country that you might need to claim asylum from. Here's the dodgy bit. If you illegally enter the UK as an asylum seeker, the Tories want to fly you to Rwanda. It doesn't matter if you've been beaten or tortured or threatened, the only people Tories exempted from being eligible for deportation are Afghans that helped the British military, and even that was only added because the House of Lords forced their hand. I know it sounds stupid and nasty and shit, and that's because it honestly is. Interestingly, the government website explains that a country is generally not considered to be a safe third country if it would send you onto another country where you would be harmed. Also, the UK is considered now to be a third country since we aren't a member of the EU anymore. By this standard, the UK would be considered an unsafe country. Luckily for us, despite the Supreme Court declaring Rwanda to be an unsafe country, our government just amended the standard and decided to declare the country as safe anyway. This means that, by any reasonable understanding, Rishi is abandoning Parliament's pledge to adhere to national and international human rights laws. The bill went back and forth between the Lords and the Commons on Tuesday night and was passed just after midnight on Wednesday. By the time this video is out, I imagine King Sausage Fingers of Ew has signed off on it. Thanks for your valuable input, by the way, Charlie my boy, and Rishi is targeting the first flights to take off in July. Here's a couple of problems I have with the plan. Rwanda was criticised by a place called the UK in 2018 after Rwandan police opened fire at a group of protesting refugees. They killed 11. Then there's the whole genocide thing in 1994, in which around 800,000 people died and 2 million fled the country. But even if you aren't spurred by the obvious threat to human life, it doesn't really make sense financially either. Official figures have previously shown that deporting asylum seekers would cost £63,000 more per person than deporting them. So far, Rishi has spent around £290 million on the scheme, with reports of the first plane leaving with 300 asylum seekers in July. By God, that's just £1 million per person. I can see why they call him the numbers guy. This is obviously a crock of shit. The current Conservative Party is not just hemorrhaging voters, it's losing MPs too, with over 60 Conservative MPs stepping down at the next election. They are trying desperately to make it seem like they're doing something besides being a bunch of useless sociopathic crackheads, but they're not. There's a 0% chance of them being in power after the next election, and with pretty much every other party vowing to shut the Rwanda plan down, the hundreds of millions of pounds setting this plan up was all for nothing. What a colossal bunch of pricks. Next up, our brothers and sisters in Scotland are having some issues too. I'll do my best to translate what's going on. If anyone wants to correct the record, feel free down below, but here's my understanding of events. The SNP have been in power in the Scottish Parliament since 2007, being led by Alex Salmond, followed by Nicola Sturgeon in 2014. In their last election, the SNP won with a minority and eventually settled on forming a coalition with the Scottish Green Party. Don't leave, I promise this is going somewhere. Last year, Nicola resigned because she felt exhausted, and also because the police were investigating the SNP after accusations of embezzlement. Nicola's husband and former SNP chief executive Peter Murrell was also arrested in relation to the crime. So the SNP needed a new leader and first minister. They eventually settled on a man named Humza Yousaf. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, geez, isn't that the same Humza Yousaf that was caught driving without adequate insurance while he was transport minister in 2016? Yes, it's that guy. See, Humza hasn't been received too well as First Minister for Scotland. A couple of days ago, he abruptly ended the SNP's coalition with the Greens, meaning that he was now the unpopular figurehead of a stale minority government. The Conservatives triggered a vote of no confidence in Humza as First Minister, and Labour are now looking at a vote of no confidence in the SNP party itself. The Greens are properly fucked off at being treated like a spare groom at a wedding, so it looks like Humza's going to struggle to even last the next few days, but even if he does, the votes look razor thin. This is all happening fresh off the back of a controversy in which Humza championed new hate speech laws in Scotland. Let me start by saying I'm a pretty lefty little snowflake, but holy fucking shit, they are ridiculous. Let me cover a couple of the basics. According to this law, you can report anyone for hate speech as long as you feel like they were hateful. Even if it's something said in the privacy of your own home, even if it wasn't said to you, you can still report this as a crime. Police Scotland have said that they will be investigating every single report of somebody breaching this Hate Crime and Public Order Act, despite the fact that they have also reported that they will no longer be able to investigate every report of low-level crime, including theft and criminal damage. My recommendation to my Celtic brethren is, if you get robbed or have your house smashed up, just tell the police that they committed the offence while talking to one another about how women should just get back in the bloody kitchen, and they'll be all over it like knockers in a wind tunnel. The law came into effect on April 1st, and there were over 8,000 reported cases in the first week alone. Police are now working overtime to try and process this sheer number of complaints, and if this trajectory carries on, hate crimes will outweigh all other crimes in Scotland put together. There is also the existence of what are called non-hate crime incidents. See, if you're ever reported for being hateful, but the threshold for charging you by law isn't met, that is still logged by Police Scotland. This information can be accessed by Disclosure Scotland, who are responsible for sharing criminal records with employers. So there is ample reason for people to be concerned that we could live in a world in which you're refused work on the basis that you tweeted, commented, or whispered something that somebody somewhere might have found offensive. You might not have even been told about it. Here's the thing. I'm all for reducing hate. I'm also aware that you'd have to be a complete fucking arsewipe to say anything to the contrary. The problem with trying to justify this sort of action is that the vast majority of normal people who think that a part of growing up is learning the balance between being a prick and being a pussy, they have nowhere to go but to the political right. We're at a point where the police are ostensibly leaving burglaries on the table while investigating if Dave called Terry a mong at his barbecue last week. It's fucking mental, and no matter where you sit on the political spectrum, you should be opposed to this kind of law. Now, one more thing before we go, Liz Truss has got a book out. I know, it's shit, don't buy it. She blames basically everyone bar herself for everything. She claims to be a free market fundamentalist while also blaming the reaction of the free market for making her mini-budget out to be a complete fucking disaster. She wants to abandon basically any group with the words human rights written in its name, and despite famously having a weaker constitution than a lettuce, seems to be in two minds about giving the role of Conservative Party leader another crack. I personally think you'd have to be on crack to think that this weapons-grade fucking div could make another go of it, but hey, who am I to tell the woman that single-handedly revolutionised pork markets that she's about as useful as the share button on Pornhub? Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please do like and subscribe, it really helps. A big thank you to my delectable and philanthropic patrons, you guys are amazing. If you'd like to support, you can do so from just £1 a month, the link is in the description. Love you, bye bye.